It started with a simple sentence. "Excuse me, ma'am. I can't sit down." The flight attendant turned, startled, her professional smile slipping just slightly as she looked down at the small voice. 13-year-old Karen Grant stood in the aisle of Flight 227 from Atlanta to Denver, nervously clutching the boarding pass that clearly said first class. "Young lady," the flight attendant snapped, "this is first class. You must be in the wrong section." Karen swallowed hard. "I'm not. This is my seat. 2A. She showed the stub. The woman leaned over to double-check, then straightened, clearly irritated. "I see that, but I also see a full flight, so take your seat, now. You're blocking the aisle." Karen hesitated. "I can't sit down right now. My back." Before she could finish, the attendant's voice hardened. "What is this? An excuse? Your back? Are we doing this now?" Laughter rose from a few rows behind. A boy whispered something to his friend, who snorted. Karen shrank into herself. She wasn't trying to cause trouble, she just couldn't sit. Not yet, not without pain. The marks from 3 days ago hadn't faded. "Fine," the attendant snapped. "If you're too special to sit, maybe you'd like to entertain us instead." Karen blinked. "What?" From a drawer in the galley, the woman pulled out a small clipboard, scribbled something furiously, and walked back with it in hand. "This," she said loudly, so the entire cabin could hear, "is a problem we use in flight crew aptitude exams. Real math, not your middle school stuff." Karen stared at the paper. It was a calculus problem, a real one. Integrals, derivatives, symbolic substitutions. "I'll give you 10 minutes. Solve it while you're standing, or you can explain your back problems to TSA when we land." More laughter. Karen's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the pen. But in her mind, something different was happening. Clicks, shifts, a quiet hum of logic she'd grown to love. She saw the pattern. What the flight attendant meant as humiliation was, to Karen, a puzzle, a gift. For nearly a year, every Tuesday and Friday night, while her mom worked late shifts at the hospital, Karen had walked 3 blocks to the local library. The librarians didn't ask questions. They just smiled and kept the lights on while she studied, borrowed calculus books, and scrolled through online math forums under the dim glow of the computer screens. Her father, a janitor at the city courthouse, had once said something she never forgot. "People lie, baby girl. But numbers? They never do." 10 minutes passed. The laughter faded. Karen stood quietly in the aisle, the clipboard pressed against the cabin wall, filling line after line with equations, substitutions, clean logic, and layered intuition that most college students would fumble through. A businessman in 2C stopped reading his magazine. A college student across the aisle leaned over, squinting at her work. A murmur rose in the cabin. "She's actually doing it," someone whispered. When she reached the solution, Karen underlined it, once, then twice. The flight attendant strode over, yanked the clipboard from her hands and stared. Her smile faded. Her eyes flicked left to right, retracing the logic. Then again, "This is ridiculous. There's no way you solved this." Karen stood silent, exhausted but steady. "I did. You're 13. This is advanced placement material." "And I solved it." The woman's voice rose. "You cheated. You must have seen this problem before." "I didn't," Karen replied calmly, "but I've been studying." Behind her, a passenger spoke up. "Ma'am, I was watching the whole time." She didn't look at anything but the clipboard. The flight attendant's face turned red. She turned away. "Sit down, now." Karen hesitated. Her back still ached, but the fear was gone. Something had changed, and she wasn't the only one who felt it. The tension still lingered in the cabin air as Karen, now seated gingerly with a folded blanket between her back and the seat, stared out the window, trying to disappear. She didn't see the man in seat 4D glance up from his notebook, didn't notice when he leaned forward, squinting at the crumpled piece of paper the flight attendant had slammed onto the cart, and she certainly didn't expect him to walk toward her row. "Excuse me?" His voice was warm, calm. Karen turned slowly. He held the paper she'd worked on. "I couldn't help but notice your solution," he said, tapping a line with his index finger. "Your substitution for the integral of the exponential function. That's not just correct, it's elegant." The flight attendant huffed from the galley. "Sir, we're trying to avoid further disruption." But he raised his hand gently. "I'm Dr. James Roberts. I'm a professor of mathematics at the University of Denver, and I'd like to speak with this young lady, if that's all right." Karen blinked. Unsure if this was another trap, Dr. Roberts smiled. Don't worry, I've never seen that exact problem before either, but her solution matches mine. People were watching now. Passengers leaned into the aisle. A few even pulled out phones, quietly recording. Dr. Roberts crouched beside her seat, lowering his voice. You didn't just get it right. You approached it like someone who understands why the math works, not just how. That's rare. May I ask your name? Karen hesitated. Karen Grant. Karen, he said gently, who's teaching you calculus at 13? She paused. No one. I taught myself. There was a beat of stunned silence. The flight attendant tried to interject. She caused a disruption, refused to follow safety instructions, and may very well be the most talented young mathematician I've met in a decade. Dr. Roberts interrupted. You saw a child in the wrong seat. I saw a child with the right mind. The woman's mouth opened, then shut. Word spread fast. By the time the plane hit minor turbulence over Kansas, the captain had been briefed. A co-pilot named Aiva Carter came out to investigate. I'm hearing there was an incident involving a student and a calculus problem, she asked quietly, scanning the small crowd forming near row 2. She didn't just solve it, said a man in 5A. She taught us while she did. Co-pilot Carter turned to Karen, then to Dr. Roberts. The professor nodded. It was a setup. She was challenged to solve something advanced just to be embarrassed, and she ended up outshining the teacher. Karen looked down at her lap. Carter crouched beside her. You okay, sweetheart? Karen nodded slightly. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, Carter said gently. You exposed it. The flight had been calm for nearly an hour. But the cabin was anything but calm. A teenage passenger in seat 7B, who had quietly recorded most of the exchange on his phone, whispered to his seatmate, It already has 80,000 views. What does? She asked, confused. He turned the screen toward her. A video titled, Flight Attendant Tries to Humiliate Black Girl with Math Problem. Regrets it instantly. Posted just 28 minutes ago. By now, Karen's name wasn't just whispered in row 2. It was racing through group chats, TikTok duets, Instagram stories, and math nerd forums faster than the plane itself. Meanwhile, at the front of the aircraft, co-pilot Aiva Carter stood with the captain and Dr. Roberts, reviewing the flight log. We need to document this, Carter said firmly. It's protocol. Any incident involving passenger treatment, especially involving a minor, must be recorded. The captain nodded grimly. And based on what I've heard, we may be dealing with more than just poor customer service. Veronica, now visibly shaken, stood near the service galley with her arms crossed, watching the passengers talk, watching phones light up, watching the narrative spin beyond her control. Back in seat 2A, Karen sat quietly, trying to read the safety pamphlet, just to look like she belonged. But her hands still trembled slightly. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something else. Recognition. People were coming up to her seat now, not with mocking comments or stares, but with questions, with curiosity, with awe. A college student from the back row knelt by her armrest. My brother's an engineering major. I sent him your video. He said you solved that integral in fewer steps than his professor showed. Karen blinked. Really? He said verbatim. Who is this kid? The moment the flight attendant's radio crackled, Veronica knew something had changed. Tower request. The voice of ATC filtered in. Please confirm you are reporting an in-flight passenger incident involving a minor and alleged harassment by crew. Repeat, confirm. The captain sighed. Confirmed. Veronica stormed forward. You're seriously reporting me for that? For trying to maintain order? For targeting a child, humiliating her in public, and then trying to bury her brilliance? Carter shot back. Yes, we are. Dr. Roberts added quietly, You made her solve a calculus problem like it was a punishment. You don't see what's wrong with that? She was defiant, Veronica snapped. She refused to sit. Because she was injured, Carter said evenly. And you didn't even ask why. The silence was deafening. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice crackled through the speaker. As we begin our initial descent into Denver, we ask all passengers to remain seated and also to remember that respect is not optional at 37,000 feet. A ripple of applause broke out. Small, scattered, but unmistakable. Karen looked out the window, heart pounding. She'd stood up for herself, and the world had stood with her. Denver International shimmered in the morning sun as Flight 227 taxied toward Gate C12. The seatbelt signs were still glowing, but already phones were buzzing with notifications. A new headline had broken. 13-year-old girl outsmarts flight crew in viral math showdown. Airline scrambles to respond. Inside the plane, Karen sat in stunned silence. Next to her, Dr. Roberts gently placed a hand over hers. "You did what few adults can do, Karen," he said. "You stayed calm, and you let your mind speak for itself." At the front of the aircraft, co-pilot Aiva Carter stood just inside the cockpit, whispering to the captain. "The press is already outside the gate," she said. "So is someone from the FAA." "Who tipped them off?" he asked. Carter looked toward the back of the plane. The truth did. When the door opened, a swarm of flashbulbs lit up the hallway beyond. "Karen? Karen Grant? Do you want to say something to other girls like you watching this? Is it true you solved college-level calculus on a plane?" Karen froze, but behind her, two steady hands rested on her shoulders, her mother's. "Care Bear," she said softly, voice thick with tears. "I came straight from the hospital when I saw the news. You okay?" Karen nodded. Her mother stepped forward and faced the crowd with fire in her eyes. "My daughter didn't ask for the spotlight," she said. "But she earned it. With every night she stayed up studying, with every time she was overlooked. And today, that ends." The crowd hushed. Then someone stepped out of the group, an older man in a dark blazer. "Miss Grant," he said, introducing himself, "I'm an executive from the airline. May we speak privately?" Dr. Roberts interjected, "Only if you're here to listen. She's been silenced enough." A few minutes later, they stood behind a podium hastily set up near the gate. Reporters leaned forward. Passengers from the flight gathered in a semicircle, their carry-ons abandoned, all eyes on the girl who changed the flight. The airline rep cleared his throat. "We at Liberty Air are deeply concerned by what occurred on Flight 227. We're initiating an immediate investigation and placing the involved crew member on leave pending the outcome." Cameras clicked. "But more than that," he continued, "we're here to say we got this wrong, and we're grateful to Karen Grant for showing us what excellence looks like." He turned to her. Karen hesitated, then stepped up. Her voice was soft but steady. "I didn't want to prove anyone wrong," she said. "I just wanted to learn. I still do." She glanced at the reporters, at the airline exec, and finally at the passengers from her flight. "But I hope next time, no kid has to solve calculus just to be treated with respect." 2 weeks had passed since Flight 227. The video had crossed 12 million views. Karen's story had been featured on Good Morning America, The New York Times, and TED-Ed was already drafting an animation about her journey. But none of that compared to what arrived in the mail that morning. A thick envelope, embossed in gold. The National Mathematics Youth Fellowship, Washington, D.C. "Karen Grant, you are cordially invited to join our summer honors program." The airline had moved quickly, not out of generosity, but necessity. In a televised press conference, CEO Nathaniel Ross stood before a massive screen showing Karen's name. The Karen Grant Initiative, Equity, Talent, and Truth at 30,000 feet. "This isn't just about one child," Ross said. "It's about every child. About how we, as an industry, have failed to see genius because we weren't looking in the right places." The initiative pledged to train all flight crews in bias awareness and inclusive conduct, partner with STEM organizations to identify young talent in underserved communities, offer scholarships and internships for students like Karen. At the end of the announcement, Ross paused. "Karen, if you're watching this," he said, "the next time you fly with us, you won't need a boarding pass. You'll have a lifetime seat wherever you want to sit." Veronica Simmons, formerly known as Veronica Maxwell, had gone silent. Her name had trended for days, not because of her rank, but because of her fall. An internal investigation confirmed her history of complaints, previously buried under paperwork and tenure. She was officially terminated from Liberty Air. But more than that, the FAA added her case to a growing list of hidden bias incidents being reviewed for national policy reform. At first, she wanted to go back to being invisible, to sit in the corner of the library with her calculus notebook and let the world spin without her. But Dr. Roberts and her mom had other ideas. "You don't have to be loud," he told her one evening, "but you do have to be present." So she said yes, to DC, to the summer fellowship, and to being seen. 3 months later, Liberty Air unveiled a new plaque at Denver International Airport. It's at just outside Gate C-12, the gate where Flight 227 had arrived. Carved in brushed steel, every child deserves to be seen, heard, and respected. Karen Grant, age 13. Karen stood beside it that morning, surrounded by young girls holding notebooks and nervous dreams. One of them, no older than 10, tugged at her sleeve. "Miss Karen, do you think I could be good at math too?" Karen knelt to eye level, her voice steady and kind. "You already are. The world just needs time to catch up." Dear friend, this wasn't just a story about math. It was about dignity, potential, and the courage to speak truth in silence. Karen didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. If her story moved you, don't just share it. Look around. Who's the next Karen in your classroom, in your flight, in your family? Let's make sure they don't have to solve a calculus problem to be treated like they belong. Subscribe to Aiva Stories because justice, like brilliance, should never be ignored. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that brilliance can come from the quietest voices, then we invite you to subscribe to Aiva Stories. Because here we don't just tell stories, we tell truths, the ones that shake systems, elevate voices, and remind the world what dignity really looks like. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and help us keep sharing stories that matter, not for clicks, for change.